Good morning, Doc.
Good morning.
Doc, I hope you're well.
Yes, I'm doing well. Great.
Well, I'm sure you've had the opportunity of listening to what the finance ministry is saying about our attempt to restructure the debts that are held externally. What do you think about the approach, first of all?
It's a good idea economically in terms of theory, because Ghana, as you know, has a creditors committee. And what it means is that those who we owe have come together to negotiate with us. And when situations like that arise, it's a good opportunity for a country that is in crisis like ours to negotiate their way to relief. So it's an opportunity for the government to find ways to deal with the debt crisis, especially the debt servicing, because the external debts are very difficult to handle. Because locally, you can just easily negotiate with the banks. The local banks are pretty flexible because they are under the control of Bank of Ghana. But the external debtors are very difficult in the sense that sometimes the large commercial loans that we have introduce a lot of difficulty into the negotiation, because some of them are not are independent of government. So when you even have creditors committee and also the support of the Paris Club to negotiate, they are not able to control private enterprises. You know, they are private. Therefore, it makes it very difficult. And usually, because of our situation, they may impose certain conditions on us as part of the negotiations. Because what it is that we are doing an exchange. And the exchange means that we are swapping the current debts that we owe for long-term ones. And because they are long-term, they're going to come with conditions. They will also introduce certain things, including not being flexible on the interest. And that means that the problem will be postponed, and there will be a build-up of larger burden for government to deal with the debt crisis in the long term. And in the short term also, it's going to affect, give the government some space. So that's the positive part of it. Because when you don't service your debt, this will give them relief to achieve the the debt management sustainability. Because when the debts are actually postponed, technically, it gives them the financial space to do other things with the revenues that they could have used to pay down, those debts, to service them. So it's a good idea. It's positive, but it depends on how the government manages the whole process. They should be aggressive in negotiating so that it becomes beneficial rather than basically just postponing the payment to another day.
It's 40%, because that's what Bloomberg is reporting. 40% haircuts on those on the principals, and then 5% on coupon. Is that aggressive enough?
It's aggressive, but it depends on whether the creditors will agree to that. Because when haircut is a significant part of the debt exchange, it becomes very complicated. Because you are basically telling someone, I won't pay you now. I'll pay you in the future, and this is how much I'm going to pay you. And when you discount it to that level, it's going to affect investor confidence. That means people won't want to put their money in your country because of the experience of previous bondholders. And this can affect our ability to even borrow. You know, the biggest mistake Ghana made was between 2007 and 2015. We borrowed a lot. We went to the commercial market to borrow. And when you are in the commercial market, the interest rate is very high. And almost half of our loans were contracted within that period, 2007 to 15, because the issue is that the loans were very enticing. Most of the financial institutions and even individuals, because that was one of the good places to invest. So the Western, bond customers, most of them bought bonds within that period, and that increased our national debt. So the difficulty is not on our side. We can propose this significant haircut, but whether the creditors will just buy into it.
Do you see someone who, and any of the people who hold our external bonds agreeing to take a 40% haircut on their principals?
Yeah, I mean, at some point they will have to, because there's no way out. Government cannot afford to pay its debts right now. The economic crisis has weakened the government's capacity to do that. So at some point, and China and the Paris Club, they are leading it. And usually they are very good at getting relief for countries. I mean, from the experience of Argentina and Greece, they're going to negotiate to get us what we want. But it's still not going to take Ghana out of the woods. The relief will be temporary. And the challenges that comes with that is also going to manifest, because investor confidence goes down. And it means that government will now be struggling to borrow to do other things. Because the economy is now saying that there has to be some amount of borrowing for it to be sustained. So we can sustain our debt, we can manage that, but it's going to cause us to create more problems, because we have to continue to borrow. And when the confidence of investors go down, it's going to affect the economy generally. Now our banks, because of the domestic debt exchange, have weakened. Their capacity to loan to the private sector has diminished, and that has significant impact on the economy, because you need to grow the economy out of the debt crisis. And to grow the economy, if cost of capital is not affordable, then it's going to affect the larger picture, because production cannot go up when you can't get loans, because the banks are recording losses and their reserves have actually depleted. So they themselves are now in crisis. And if we don't take care, banking crisis is going to take different form, where the banks will be suffering from liquidity and many other issues that can cause another financial crisis. So the effect will not be very pleasant. But the government at this point doesn't have any other short-term solution.
But is 40% not reaching for too high? Because if you owe me money, definitely, and then you because you say you have difficulties paying back my money, you come and almost half my money for me. That is too bitter a pill to swallow.
And there's even legal part of it. Most of individual bondholders can basically go to court, depending on how the whole bond was packaged. And in some countries like Lebanon, they had a lot of lawsuits. And when you have that, it creates a very chaotic situation. you'll be battling with bondholders, and that will create the impression that anybody who is coming to invest can also go through that. So definitely investor confidence will be affected. So creating that high expectation for me is good for the country in the short term, but in the long term, we are jeopardizing our economic future, because when we don't have confidence in government, because government usually finds it very easy to sell bonds, because people think that the government is more reliable. The government will give you your money when you need it. So now if government is taking that drastic measure, it's now going to disincentivize people from investing more in the country. And as a developing country, we need the presence of, bondholders' activities to make sure that we have the required capital to continue to pursue growth policies. So I think the challenge we face with the higher level is, they propose that Paris Club, China is also facing a very difficult task, because most of the loans from China are also private. So they will have to convince the private entities to accept that. And that is really going to require a lot of, work on the part of China, and also our debt restructuring negotiators. So the difficulties will come with it. And I think personally, the 40% is so high, because the Ghana government is estimating how much it will save them to actually create space for them to have control over their debts. But I agree with you, this is very high.
And I guess it's you have to undertake a good balancing act in order not to, like you said, affect confidence in you going forward.
Definitely. And the confidence is very badly needed. Because after we deal with the short-term challenges that we face, we need to continue to pursue growth. Now, growth is so stunted. 1.6 is very low. Last year, we started with about 3%, which was still low as compared to some years back. But the growth is badly needed, because if we don't grow the economy, how are we going to pay the debt, even if we restructure it at some point? Because our debt is now, GDP to debt ratio is chasing that of Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka is now what is discussing lecture halls everywhere about debt crisis, because they have over 100%. And Ghana currently has about 99. So we are cruising towards where Sri Lanka is today. And that has a lot of negative effect on the economy, because investors will have the impression that the economy is not doing well. Although we will get some relief, this is not epic. It's not something that, the debtors are just forgiving us for forever. But now the government will have to plan to deal with the long-term consequences. President Mahama created the Stabilization Fund and other funds for this reason. Because when you go to the bond market and take loans, if you don't have a plan to repay it, it becomes a problem. And I think the challenge we face is we did not invest in productive ventures. If you take the Terminal 3 loans, for example, we can pay it back because there's an income generating activity behind it. But when you borrow for expenditure, mostly they will end up spending an expenditure, the recurrent expenditure, as part of government deficit financing. And when you do that without a plan to repay it, even though we will get some relief, it's still going to keep us in the woods, in the sense that we have to now plan to pay it back. I know with IMF, there's some level of discipline that we expect in the austerity. So physical consolidation can take place for government to now have space to put some money aside if they are prudent, so that when these bonds mature, we can be able to at least do servicing to keep the economy going.
Doc,